Hey, I'm Kai, and you may have noticed I'm on a little bit of a 7-string kick at the minute. After the absolute horror show that was my Gear for Music Harlem 7-string, I figured I ought to try something out as a bit of a redemption to see whether or not I actually like 7-strings. So quick disclaimer before I get into this video, I'm not a 7-string player, this is very new territory for me, so apologies if you have to muscle through some caveman riffs before I start to get to grips with this thing. Speaking of riffs, let's hear how this one sounds in the context of a full mix. So I picked up this Schecter KM7 Mark 1 in a trade for my Balaguer Ether. I've tried a couple of budget 7-strings, but never anything that was actually playable, so this was very much just testing the waters to see if 7-strings are for me. Now, the specs on the Schecter KM7 Mark 1 are really what drew me to the model. These are fantastic specs considering the price of the instrument. You can pick these up for about £600 on the used market here in the UK. We've got a hipshot hardtail bridge, Seymour Duncan Nazgul and Sentient pickup set. It's got stainless steel frets, 26.5-inch scale length. This guitar has also got a Graphtec nut and lumen lace side dots. Other than the Schecter branded locking tuners, there's really no spec on the white sheet that you can complain about on this guitar. It also balances really nicely both on a strap and when you're holding it. I'll stand up quickly and show you how it balances. It's really good, a guitar that when you let go of it, it doesn't move anywhere. It's not weighted towards the body and it's not weighted towards the neck. As for the quality of this instrument, I'm not going to do a full quality control check since this guitar is 10 years old now and any problems with it are not Schecter's fault at this point. That said, this guitar does need some attention that I'll hopefully get to before my next video on it. I went over the neck with a fret rocker and found quite a few high spots, some of which cause almost fretting out when the action's too low. The Schecter branded locking tuners are really no good here. I'm not sure whether they've just tarnished due to age or what, but they're so slippery to use and the ratio is really inconsistent. So you'll be turning it and it'll do nothing, and then you turn it a little bit more and it jumps, turn it a little bit more and then it jumps back down. It's just really slippery and not fun to use. I don't believe this to be a nut issue, as you can really feel it in the tuners themselves. One minor thing I did notice is that it's got the original style of hipshot hardtail bridge with these sort of squared off sharp edge saddles. This is very traditional saddles and, not a major issue for most people, but my Sully Alita and my Balaguer baritone growler have both got the newer style of hipshot saddles with the rounded edges. They're a lot more comfortable. I did knock the corner off of this one with a file just to get it a little bit more comfortable, and it's pretty much fine now. The electronics on this also need some work, but I'm 99% sure someone has swapped the original pickups out and then put them back in again for sale at some point. Currently, the switch is wired back to front, so up is going to be my bridge position, and also the push-pull doesn't seem to be grounded, so my coil split tones are super noisy. As far as work is concerned, I'm going to be giving this a full fret level, crown and dress, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to be going through all of the electronics and rewiring them, and I would like to swap out the tuners at some point, but I don't know, it's quite an expensive job, especially for a 7-string, so we'll see how I get on with them just as is. When I got this guitar, I did give it a full restring and just sort of a basic setup. This is running the 9.5 to 46 gauge strings, and we've got a low 66. It's currently tuned down to drop G sharp, but I have flattened the F sharp down to an F. This basically means that I've got a 6-string baritone in drop G sharp with a high E flat string, rather than a E flat standard guitar with a low G sharp string. This is a technique I totally poached from Ben Eller, but it seems to be really working to me and making for a nice transition over from baritone 6s to 7-strings. I had to keep the action pretty high just to get rid of some of the fret buzz, so I'm currently running 2mm action on the low string and 1.5mm on the high string. I'd like to get this down to sort of maybe 1.75mm on the low string and 1mm on the high string. Now with the overview out of the way, let's get into some tones. I'm running the Fractal FM3 here. I've got 4 different tones set up, so let's hear them. The first one is going to be a really big ambient clean tone. Now the next tone I've got set up is sort of a light crunchy thing. I was going to go for a split coil spanky kind of sound, but this crunch tone's really working nicely. Of course, I've designed a heavy tone for this. This is using the FAS Brutals amp from the FM3. The final tone on this preset is going to be a lead tone. I'll switch over to the neck pickup for this. I do think this KM7 is going to be a good addition to my setup. However, I'm really not happy with it right now, and it does need some work to get playable. I do like to be able to have that low notes as well as the high notes for ambient stuff. It's really giving me a lot more range, as expected with an extended range guitar, but I'm really enjoying it so far. It'll take some time for me to get used to for sure, but it's one of those new gear days that make me inspired to play guitar, which is really what getting new stuff is all about. The only thing that I'm really struggling with right now is that the extra jumbo frets are really hard to get used to. I'm so used to the skinny, narrow frets, and I guess my caveman grip is pushing this guitar out of tune constantly. Just some of these takes in this video took 5 minutes just to get a single working take, just to get everything in tune. It's been quite difficult. So that is everything I've got for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, I'd recommend checking out my Gear for Music Harlem 7-string review, because that was far less favourable than this one. That's all for this video though, so thank you for watching. I've been Kai.